So Joe Rogan's in the news again. He's in the news every day. He has the most popular show in America. He gets 11 million views per episode. There's no show comes close to that, right? That's like going back to 1974 and All in the Family kind of numbers when there was only 3 TV stations, you know. So, and now everybody's up in arms because Joe Rogan offers an alternative to the big pharma-funded narrative around COVID. And so the big pharma-funded news outlets are freaking out. Well, they tried to smear him before, right? So CNN lied about COVID. They lied about ivermectin. And Joe Rogan had Sanjay Gupta on the show face-to-face. And Sanjay Gupta had to admit that CNN was lying. And Joe Rogan was correct about ivermectin. Gupta tells Joe Rogan CNN shouldn't have called ivermectin horse dewormer. People still do that like it's funny or something or clever. It's not. It's the opposite of both those things. You're repeating a lie, but was made up by big pharma. So
they should do a PSA.
So nobody. What?
They should have a PSA that teaches you how to say no to ivermectin from your doctor when he wants to give it to you. Hey, no way, doc, that's horse dewormer. Say no, then go.
So Joe Rogan, they want now. So Joe Rogan, when he gets a doctor from CNN on, he schools the doctor, not the other way around. And now. This is the new thing. Doctors call out Spotify over Joe Rogan spreading false and societal harmful COVID-19 claims. The Spotify has a responsibility to mitigate the spread of misinformation on its platform. The company presently has no misinformation policy.
They want him to put a mask on Joe Rogan. Spotify. Cover Joe Rogan with a mask.
Joe Rogan does a comedy podcast. Joe Rogan is literally a comedian who announces guys fighting in cages, and he does a podcast. And now they want to censor it. Do you see how far we've come from Alex Jones? Do you see how far? They went from Alex Jones to the president of the United States to a Kennedy, and now they're going to the #1 show in America. It's just Alex Jones and then everyone and anyone else who steps out of line. And by the way, so they say 250 doctors. Well, 16,000 physicians challenged the 300 who currently accuse Joe Rogan and others of spreading misinformation. And this big thing of 250 doctors reminds me that there was 100 authors who were against Einstein when he came out with the theory of relativity. That doesn't mean anything.
Why did they hate science?
Why did they hate
why did Einstein hate science so much?
So this is the real reason all this is happening. Joe Rogan is getting 11 million views per episode. CNN primetime doesn't even get 1 million. He's not 100% bigger than them. He's not 200% bigger. 3, 4. He's 1,100% bigger than over. And by the way, his podcast with Dr. Robert Malone, who they tried to censor, got 40 million downloads or views. 40 million. So this censoring thing isn't working. It's doing the Streisand effect. Why? Because people trust Joe Rogan. They don't trust the establishment news. They trust Joe Rogan. And they should distrust this news because this news is all bought and paid for. I love this meme. Look at me. I am the mainstream now. Yes, he is. What is the definition of mainstream? It's just like somebody tried to tell me Donald Trump isn't the mainstream Republican. He's fringe. No, by definition, he's the mainstream Republican. He won the primary. More people voted for him inside the Republican Party than anybody else, which makes him the mainstream of the party. Just like Joe is now the mainstream of the media, except the corporate establishment media, legacy media, can't stand it because they can't control him. And Big Pharma controls the news media. And so they're telling them, you better control him, smear him. And that's what they're doing. And look at them all. Here's The Guardian. The last time I saw The Guardian, they were repeating CIA lies about Julian Assange and never retracted any of it. That's who The Guardian is. They go, menace to public health. 270 doctors call out Spotify over Joe Rogan's podcast. Well, the irony here is that's incorrect. They're spreading misinformation in their headline about Joe Rogan spreading misinformation. That's not 270 doctors. It's a handful of doctors. We're going to get to that. That's not accurate. That, of course, The Guardian, which is a shit magazine, a shit publication now, did that. They're totally mouthpieces of the intelligence community and the establishment. They're a neoliberal rag. 270 health experts. CNBC getting a little closer to the truth.
Are they all chiropractors? Is that what?
I think, maybe, yeah, right? Joe Rogan's COVID misinformation is a sociological issue of devastating proportions. But not when they do it. Not when CNBC has that, who's that guy, Joe Kramer, come on and tell you, don't worry that the Lehman Brothers is safe. They're fine. Don't worry about it. Oh, my God, they just crashed. All right, I was wrong about that one.
The Mad Money guy said that, don't worry, Lehman Brothers is fine?
Yes, look it up, Steph.
Jim Cramer.
Jim Cramer.
Jim Cramer, that's right.
I almost said Howard Kramer, the comedian. Or how about this one? Rolling Stone, exclusive. Doctors have sent Spotify a petition demanding that stop permitting COVID-19 misinformation on their platform, including the lies spread on the Joe Rogan Experience. What about the lies spread in the Rolling Stone magazine? Remember this big lie? Gunshot victims left waiting as a horse dewormer overdose. That was all made up. By the way, it was August. They put a picture of people standing in line with coats on.
Are those the shot people?
Are these the shot people? Who are they?
Hey, what, I got to stand here shot while I'm waiting for these dewormer people?
Do you see how they put together a piece of propaganda that's paid for by Big Pharma? That's all this is. That's what this is. Go ahead.
I was able to change my clothes before I came to stand in line. You know, I got a hole in my shot clothes, so I went home.
I got blood all over my shot clothes.
I don't want to look bad in this long line.
So Rolling Stone and everyone else misreported this, spread that lie. No one's calling for Rolling Stone to get a fact checker, even though they certainly need one. Here's what Glenn Greenwald said about it. The only reason Rolling Stone is calling this an update, as opposed to what it is so plainly is, a retraction, is because liberal outlets know that their readers don't care at all if they publish fake news as long as it's done with the right political motives and goals. And that's 100% right. They don't even care that Fauci lies. Joe Rogan never lied about anything having to do with COVID. Fauci has 3 times at least that are admitted lies. That's totally different than getting something wrong. And here's the most interesting thing about this 270 doctors. Jordan Schachtel broke it down. This is kind of funny. The 270 doctors called out Joe Rogan, but the authors of the letter and the vast majority of his signatories aren't medical doctors. In fact, only a handful are practicing physicians. So that whole fucking thing is a big bullshit misinformation itself.
What are the other people? The non-medical doctors.
Here we go. It turns out the real arbiters of misinformation are the individuals behind the letter itself. And they are being helped along by a corrupt corporate media that is misreporting the credentials of its signatories. Of course. The media and big tech want to create the image of a 100-strong coalition of medical doctors who are genuinely concerned about Joe Rogan's conversations on his massive platform. Twitter even got in on the propaganda campaign against Rogan, adding this medical experts letter to their curated headline section. That's when you logged into Twitter, that was one of their curated headlines. That's called propaganda. That's what Twitter's doing. They're pushing propaganda. I reviewed the open letter, and it turns out that only around 100 of the 270 plus signatories to the letter are people with qualified medical degrees, and a large chunk of that 100 or so medical doctors are MDs employed at universities who are not, in fact, practitioners of medicine. Yet part of the letter reads, quote, as physicians, we bear the arduous weight of a pandemic that has stretched our medical systems to their limits and only stands to be exacerbated by the anti-vaccination sentiment woven into this and other episodes of Rogan's podcast. Paradoxically, the disseminators of this petition are guilty of the very misinformation label that they've attached to Rogan. In fact, neither of the two reported co-authors of the letter, Jessica Rivera and Ben Rain, possess medical degrees. Rivera holds a master's degree and Rain is a PhD academic who researches psychiatry.
Oh, so the way Bill Cosby was a doctor, you mean?
Yes.
Like Dr. Cosby.
The letter denouncing Joe Rogan and pressuring Spotify to censor his speech has all kinds of random signatories. By my count, the letter is signed by over 50 PhD academics, around 60 college professors, 29 nurses, 10 students, 4 medical residents, and even a handful of science podcasters.
And Dr. Dre.
The letter, which uses the word misinformation 9 times in the first 5 paragraphs, concludes with the call for Spotify to censor Rogan as part of a policy to moderate misinformation on the platform. We're coming to help you. We're going to save you from bad things and bad thoughts. We're going to save you from bad thoughts that can hurt you. Shh, take your pill, go to sleep. It's a little soma. The government and the corporation is in charge. Notably, there is no information on who or what group is behind the creation and circulation of the open letter. Rivera, the reported lead author of the letter, is associated with the far-left Rockefeller Foundation and The Atlantic. And she's a frickin' CNN contributor.
So it's the widow Jobs behind this?
Yeah. So this guy, Luke Rudkowski, found this. So about 300 doctors are crying about. So he highlights some of the funny ones. This guy is a postdoctoral fellow. This person here is the director of research at Grasshopper Farms. Where is Grasshopper Farms? Hey, Suri, what is Grasshopper Farms? I don't know if Suri's going to tell me. Okay, thank you, Suri. Oh, you did? No, there's a movie, I guess, called that. This is Colleen. She signed it under the person from Grasshopper Farms. She's a dentist.
These are all less qualified than Dr. Robert Malone, the fringe scientist who does know about that specific science.
Yeah, the guy who invented the mRNA vaccine technology. Here's Courtney Kennedy. She's a physician's assistant. She signed it. Oh, Grasshopper Farms is a pot farm. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought you wanted to show it. That's what I.
This is a professor. This is someone who's an adult gerontology primary care nurse practitioner. This is a researcher. This is an associate professor of neurology. This is an analytical scientist. This is a consultant. This is a consultant. This is a postdoctoral fellow. And this here is a writer and researcher. So that was funny. That was funny.
Jimmy, even if Grasshopper Farms was not a pod farm and was a grasshopper farm where they farm grasshoppers, that's not any better.
Right. I agree.
It doesn't improve it.
So here's what Glenn Greenwald says. He says they can't stand that anyone airs any dissent from the views they demand be treated as orthodoxy. And they become particularly enraged when the people they think are inferior and stupid have large audiences while nobody listens to them. That's what drives this desperation. And he's retweeting CNN calling for censoring of Joe Rogan. YouTube removed the video version of the podcast, but that podcast is still available on Spotify, and that's a problem, they say on CNN. Glenn Greenwald goes on to say, why anyone thinks it would be a healthy or positive development to empower executives of Google, already the most powerful corporation in the history of the world, with even greater powers, now to decree what is true and false in our debates is both mystifying and horrifying. Yeah, let's let Google, the most powerful corporation in the world, they should decide what's true or false, or what we could even talk about. Let's do that. And I want to read you what Matt Taibbi says. He says, for all those who think it's possible to prohibit medical misinformation, who's going to be in charge of deciding what is medical misinformation and what should be prohibited? The most dangerous misinformation is official misinformation. We've always said the first purveyors of fake news is the government. The second one is the establishment corporate news. And he's kind of saying that here. The most dangerous misinformation is official misinformation, and the only defense against official misinformation is a completely free press. And he has one more that I want to read. He says, there are no shortcuts in media. You can't force trust. If audiences listen to people like Joe Rogan much more than mainstream sources, critics should first ask why that might be, and realize trying to censor or control his show will only compound their own trust problem. That's 100% true.
That's why they have it now.
That's right. So Brett Weinstein says they rigged the game. Monopoly on mass communication, captured government, platforms that shape our thoughts and relationships. They don't care that we hate them, so long as we're frightened and dependent. But they miss some stuff, the human spirit, and Joe Rogan is on top of the list. That was very well said. Here's Joe Biden. I just want to show you how ridiculous this is. Joe Biden, I make a special appeal to social media companies and media outlets. Please deal with the misinformation and disinformation that's on your shows. It has to stop. That's funny because you're the biggest purveyor of lies and misinformation, and we all know it. You're a pathological liar.
Jimmy, come on. Joe Biden went to jail going to visit Nelson Mandela in South Africa.
He finished top of his class. He finished top of his class. He had 3 degrees. He was chosen academic of the year. He was chosen political science student of the year. None of that true. None of it. All made up. Also, fact check. Joe Biden makes false claims about COVID-19, auto prices, and other subjects at his CNN town hall. That's from CNN. But Joe Biden wants social media to start censoring people for giving misinformation. Well, you'd be the first one. Here's the Pfizer CEO. Here's Reuters. Tweeted this out. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla said in an interview that 2 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech shot offered very limited protection against infection with the Omicron variant. Yes, he did. He was not talking about protection against infection by other variants. Yeah, he said the quiet part out loud, and now this is Reuters, which, by the way, the head of Reuters is on the Pfizer board. Right? The former head of Reuters is on the Pfizer board, and he's still the head of the Reuters charity. So this is what Joe Rogan's up against. You don't want to have a guy fact-checking Reuters because they're full of shit? Because they are. How about Rachel Maddow?
It means that instead of the vaccine being able, instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person to person, spreading and spreading, sickening some of them, but not all of them. And the ones that it doesn't sicken don't know they have it. And then they give it to even more people because they didn't recognize they were. right? Instead of the virus
This is
being
a
able
lie.
to hop from person to person to person,
This was never true.
potentially mutating and becoming more virulent.
That's
and
also not.
drug-resistant
That's
along
not
the way.
true.
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
This is not true.
A vaccinated person gets
That wasn't
exposed to
even
the
what the
virus.
drug companies were saying.
This was
The
never
virus
the truth.
Does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
Oh, really?
But can Russia use it? That's the
Cannot
question.
use a vaccinated
Rachel.
person as a host to go get more people.
So
That means
don't we have
the vaccines will get us.
So don't we have a fader for this computer and a fader for this computer, right? But not for the room? Oh. Okay. So anyway, everything she just said there is not true. Everything she just said there is not true. And she said it at the top of her lungs, and she said it like she's super earnest. And she's just lying and spreading misinformation, much more misinformation than I've ever heard on Joe Rogan's show. And no one cares about this. Why? Because she's lying in favor of the corporation. She's not saying anything that challenges the corporation. Everything she's saying is the corporation narrative. That's what they want her to say. It's all wrong. It's all misinformation. It's all a lie. And no one will ever say anything. Nobody will ever ask for a fact checker at MSNBC. Here she is also tweeting out the bogus ivermectin gunshot victim thing that we just showed you earlier. By the way, still up on her Twitter page. How come Twitter doesn't take this down for misinformation? Because she's lying at the behest of the people who pay them. Rachel Maddow's going to lie to you, but she's going to lie to you in this direction her corporate owners want her to lie. And that's why she'll never get in trouble for it. I tell you the truth about this, and I'll get taken down. I tell you the truth about ivermectin, I'll get taken down. But she can lie about it, and it'll never get taken down from YouTube or from Twitter or Instagram or Facebook because she's lying to prop up the corporate narrative. Go, Kurt, you want to say something?
Haven't you ever heard of the noble lie that's way better than the peasant lies?
Peasant lie. Here's a guy, senior producer for fake tough guy Lawrence O'Donnell. He tweeted this out. Important note for unvaccinated who believe in natural immunity. Believe? Natural immunity is a scientific fact that you're now gaslighting your own readers or followers into thinking isn't real. The first Omicron-linked death in the U.S. was recorded in Texas, Harris County on Monday evening. The man was unvaccinated but had previously been infected. That's not real. That's a fake story that, of course, Kyle Griffin's going to tweet out. It's going to get 37,000 likes, and it's completely misinformation. This guy's a shittier news person than me and Joe Rogan.
But that's impressive that he gets the entire audience of CNN to like it.
The entire audience.
They're mean.
Yes. This is 100% wrong, medical misinformation, but it props up the Pfizer's narrative so it stays up on Twitter. They'll never take it down. Do you think this guy has integrity? Fuck no. His whole paycheck comes from the war machine and fucking Pfizer and fossil fuels.
Is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer. Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This week with George Stephanopoulos.
Hey, that's pretty nice of them. Keep bringing me stuff, you know?
Yes.
Is brought to you by Pfizer.
This weather report brought to you by Pfizer.
Today's countdown to the royal wedding is brought to you by Pfizer.
So they say brought to you by instead of paid for by. They don't want to say, and we want to say we paid. We want to say we brought it to you. That's what nice people do. They bring you things.
Hey, thanks, Pfizer. Can you bring us the bill? We're ready to go. They're serving.
And now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download, brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer. On how to find the hidden sugars in the American family diet. Sponsored by Pfizer.
And so what happens when you get that kind of... So here's some more misinformation.
Let's bring in
You ready?
NBC senior medical correspondent, Dr. John Torres. Dr. Torres, good morning to you. As Kathy mentioned, that new poll finds about 2/3 of parents are hesitant to get their kids the shot. What is your advice to alleviate some of their concern?
Well, I've got some lies that came right from Pfizer that I'm going to just use to scare the shit out of parents right now. Ready? Because as you see, most parents don't want to get their kids vaccinated. So we came up with a bunch of lies. They're pretty scary. Here we go. I'm going to dress like a lumberjack, even though I'm a doctor.
And Joe, you're right. There is that hesitancy to get the shot, and it's a hesitancy that parents typically have because they're very protective of their child. A couple of things I tell them is, one, from a community perspective, children right now are 25% of the cases that are out there. That's from a community perspective, but parents are more worried about their own child. So here are some numbers for their child. Last week, 118,000 children ended up with Pfizer. Since the pandemic, over 8,000 have been hospitalized, a third of those in the ICU. And unfortunately, there have been 146,000 deaths, which according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, puts COVID now in the top 10 causes of death for children.
He's just making that stuff up. And guess what? People who watched that segment knew it. He just was fear-mongering the hell out of people.
Wait, Jimmy.
What?
Maybe he meant his top 10 favorite causes of death.
That's what I think he meant. So, because when people watch that on YouTube, which it's still up, that unbelievable medical misinformation, I'll tell the truth on YouTube, and I'll get in trouble. This guy does this. People voted it down 5,000 to 600. That's why they took away the dislike button. That's why, because people were on to their medical misinformation about COVID on YouTube, and YouTube was like, we got to scramble, and we got to suppress this. We're going to get rid of the dislike button, and they fucking did, and that's about COVID. They gave some bullshit excuse about, we don't want to make new...
Self-esteem.
Yes, we don't want to hurt the feelings of our creators. Shut the fuck up. You did that because your owners... Your biggest advertisers don't want to see this.
Yeah, I think it's not even just Pfizer. I think that's probably a bunch of major corporations came together on that one.
And remember how every establishment news told you that ivermectin was a horse drug? It wasn't a human drug. And not only is it a human drug, not only is it on the WHO list of essential medicines, not only that, not only did it win the Nobel Prize for fucking human medicine just 5 years ago. But here's from the CDC. The CDC says, despite these findings, there was all these findings that were positive about ivermectin. It says the National Institutes of Health in the United States recently stated that, quote, there are insufficient data to recommend either for or against the use of ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19. And the World Health Organization recommends against its use. So they go, we can't recommend for or against it. But if you watch the news, you would think it wasn't even a medicine. You wouldn't even think it was a medicine. And the story of ivermectin shows that we as a public have misplaced our trust in the authorities and have underestimated the extent to which money and power corrupts. That's 100%. Aren't you angry that you've been lied to about one of the most, by the way, ubiquitous medicines in the world? My hairdresser had to take ivermectin when she had bowel surgery, and she had not her bowel, intestine surgery. She had to take it for like 3 months. So I go, what does that make you think? She goes, why would they keep lying like that? Like, she doesn't figure it out, that because the big pharma doesn't want you to know about it. Because they're being paid by big pharma. They want you to think it's not a real medicine. Which is another reason why they never tell you about vitamin D3. They never tell you about zinc. They never tell you about vitamin K2. They never tell you about how important it is to lose weight. They never tell you about any of this stuff. Here's what Garland Nixon, friend of the show, says. Breaking news, the CIA mouthpiece media is trying to destroy the podcaster that is lapping them in audience ratings. Let's go. I like Primo Radical says, it's really insane how extreme NPR propaganda is. I'm listening to a program called On the Media where they're talking about how there's going to be a civil war unless social media companies don't start deplatforming more people.
Oh.
Yes, the key to a healthy society is censorship. So there you go. And by the way, I'm not saying, just so somebody at YouTube doesn't get the exact wrong idea, I'm not saying ivermectin treats COVID. I'm saying it's a human medicine and they lied about it. The CDC is the one who is saying they didn't have enough evidence to recommend for or against it. So there you go. There's your Joe Rogan. And thank God for Joe Rogan. That's all I can say is thank God for Joe Rogan. I don't know if I would have the courage to go on doing what I'm doing if there wasn't someone bigger than me doing it also. So God bless him. Of course, he's not risking his channel because he left YouTube for this very fucking reason. And I would do it in a heartbeat. I would leave YouTube and go to Spotify. Nobody's fucking called. When is Spotify going to offer me a thing? I'm ready. I'm cheap, too. I'm very cheap. Very cheap. You can get me. When is the CIA going to try to get me? Why don't they try to co-opt? Or the FBI? Why doesn't somebody try to co-opt me? Where's my MSNBC contract? Where's that?
Because you haven't demonstrated that you could be brought around to, the society kind of,
Why don't they try?
Like a Martha's Vineyard. Yeah, that's the same thing I said.
They don't try. How do they know? I don't even know what my price is. Why don't they try to find out? I bet it's less than we think. Hey, come see a live Jimmy Dore show. We're in Los Angeles, January 7th and 14th. Then we're in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Philadelphia. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets and become a premium member to get access to all our premium videos.